afternoon, I'm Rory. This is 420 Central TV, and I have the pleasure this afternoon of speaking to Dr. Adinoff, who's here on a visit, staying over and visiting the Jazz Farm on his way to a conference, a medical conference, I understand, in Cape Town. So welcome. We're really happy to have the privilege of having you on our show. It is a true privilege to have someone come into South Africa and share some of their story with us. And just off camera, before we started, we were talking about some of the credentials of Dr. Bryon. So if you don't mind, if you just run me through exactly what you were telling me off camera a moment ago, what you do and who it is you represent.
Sure. One of the hats I wear, the one I'm wearing right now, is president of Doctors for Drug Policy Reform. We are an international organization of physicians, other medical professionals, scientists who advocate for best practices in drug policy reform to support public health, minimize harm, and reduce stigma. I'm also a clinical professor at University of Colorado Anschutz Medical Campus in Denver, Colorado, and I'm editor-in-chief of the American Journal of Drug and Alcohol Abuse. And actually that's relevant to my conference that I'm having in Cape Town in a few days.
So I don't think I've had the opportunity of speaking to somebody as qualified as you are when it comes to cannabis. I think the health benefits and the like are not even having scratched the surface in terms of what we're learning. So you're really at the forefront of something interesting. May I press there and just say, so in that role, what is it that's your responsibility? Are you there and are you trying to be pro-cannabis, or what is it and how is it that you go about influencing our industry?
Let me back up a little bit. 10 years actually.
Yes.
When our organization was founded by David Nathan, he's a psychiatrist in New Jersey, who was impressed with an issue that continues to this day, and that if he asked his friends, his colleagues, physician colleagues, should cannabis be legalized, they said yeah. But if you look at the medical organizations, they were all either against it or silent, and not much has changed since then. So David started Doctors for Cannabis Regulation in order to address that issue, to give physicians a voice that regulation is better than something being prohibited and putting lots and lots of people in jail. So it wasn't so much that cannabis is good or bad, it's just we should leave it up to people to be able to decide if they want to use it, and let's stop putting particularly black and brown people in jail.
Right.
We expanded our organization 2 years. I moved from Texas to Colorado 7 years ago, and prior to that I was in full-time academia and working for the federal government and the VA and the state of Texas at the university, and I couldn't be too outspoken. I moved to Colorado, retired from the VA, from federal government, from the state, and I could say whatever I want, like being here on the Jazz Farm and talking to you all. And so we expanded our mission 2 years ago so that we speak on all drugs, because the issues are the same for all of them, that people should have the right, the agency, to be able to use drugs they want, and we should make it as safe as possible and not put people in jail. So that's particularly true, I guess, of cannabis, because of all the drugs that people use, it's certainly relatively the safest one around.
Absolutely, I'd agree with you. I mean, and just to ask you the question there, where you went on to other drugs, it was at the beginning founded around cannabis. The conversation started.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So what's interesting for me is that it went into that space, and just for clarification, so it sounds like it was more of, although they were in the medical fraternity, it was a moral decision rather than a pro-cannabis decision from a medical point of view.
Yes.
Or a lack of harm point of view, if I were.
Certainly speaking for me, now there were many people, and still are many people involved with our organization, who were most interested in the issue of cannabis, both as a medical, its medical use, and that it's relatively safer than other drugs. Other people in our organization are more interested in psychedelics, particularly for their medical use. Other people are most concerned about the deaths from opiate.
Yes.
But yes, it started out with a focus on cannabis.
I like what you touched on there, because whilst you've spoken about other, should we call them drugs, recreational and beyond, you've touched on opioids as well. So to have that in your scope as well, I think is a massive credit. It's not sort of one-sided and we're assessing drugs, sort of street drugs. We're assessing the effects of be they medicinal and or other. Is that right?
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So, you know, a little while we were talking about the fact that you're here and you're headed to Cape Town, and you've got a couple of days free, which is, I'm hoping, going to be enjoyable. You'll catch some really good things in Cape Town. But tell us a little bit more about the conference that you're going to.
The conference I'm going to is the International Society of Addiction Journal Editors, or ISAGE, ISAJE. And I was president a couple of years ago. Our president now is now, and I'm going to screw up the last name. It's a South African name, more Joe, I believe. And she's from South Africa.
Right.
So we've been meeting every year typically in the United States or Canada one year, and then Europe the other. So this is new for us.
Right.
Going to Africa.
Right.
So we're very excited about it. It's a small group,
Right.
but it's an enthusiastic group and certainly a highly specialized group.
Fantastic, fantastic. I want to just take it back a little bit again and go back into your organization that you have. It's international, am I
Yes.
right? So then I would want to ask you, which are the countries that are sort of bringing the most advanced interventions or logic in terms of trying to lead us to a safer cannabis world? Would there be, are there people that sort of stand out for you?
Well, Israel, I would say from a medical perspective, I mean, that's where the original, not the original, but much of the best early work was done, and has continued to do a lot of excellent work. The United States has really done a lot of
I would
studies.
imagine volumetrically, yes.
Yeah, and even though cannabis is a Schedule 1 drug, and so they say research is hard to do, it's difficult to do, but it's certainly not impossible.
Absolutely.
And once you get the hang of it and what kind of things need to be done and forms to fill out and where to get your cannabis, people do it quite frequently. I mean, they've done a lot of psychedelic work, certainly,
Yes.
in the U.S., and it's all Schedule 1. So it's more of a will, and funding has perhaps been one of the biggest problems. NIDA was for so many years focused on just show us the harms of cannabis. We don't want to know about the good stuff. And they're not really funded by Congress to look at the medical positives. I think it's been limited throughout the world for decades.
Yes.
And there just isn't enough going on. But I would point to Israel and the United States as probably the leaders. Canada has a lot of good work, as does many places in Europe as well.
But those would be for you the sort of leading edge.
Yeah.
Then a question for me also is important. I get concerned in South Africa. You know, we're really trying to first of all free the plant, and I guess that's our bias. But that's what we're wanting to do and see. And then you now have mushrooms or I would imagine DMT and a number of other players that enter the room. And I'd like to know from you, have you seen positive stuff coming from be it the DMT or the psychedelics, etc., etc.? And when I ask that question is, more within the medicinal space, are you being exposed to some interesting research that's coming back from those being allowed to be used medicinally?
Yes, I mean there's really very impressive work coming out on the psychedelics, particularly I would say MDMA and psilocybin at this point.
Right.
Less so, but still it's there with DMT.
Right.
And some with LSD, and actually, yeah, some with LSD as well. So that's really been an amazing renaissance.
Right.
And I'm very disappointed that we didn't get it approved, either psilocybin or MDMA for PTSD and psilocybin for depression. But I think they're both kind of close.
Okay.
I live in a state that has decriminalized, Colorado has decriminalized DMT, mescaline, psilocybin, and ibogaine. Ibogaine kind of surprised to me because it does have some cardiovascular toxic effects, but apart from that, there's just a lot of research going on. I think that's, to me, that's not the biggest holdups. We have sufficient research. I got led into this field of neuropsychopharmacology by some seminal experiences I had with psychedelics. Everyone who's done not everyone, but there's enough. We have hundreds, thousands of years of experience with both cannabis and psychedelics to know that they have medicinal value, that they're useful. We need to dot our I's and cross our T's to get FDA approval, of course. But the medical history of both of those is really pretty profound. And I hope that within the near future we can get these approved. It's surprising to me how slow we've been. Though many countries have legalized cannabis for medical use. The problem isn't so much the law often, it's the statutes around it. It's some countries have legalized cannabis, but at very, very, very low concentrations of THC. So it's not really worth it. Or, how many joints should you need to smoke, to smoke, in order to get an effect? Or they're not giving out any licenses to people to make it, or the regulations aren't clear, or there's no industry, or there's no way to import it. So, and we have treaties, UN treaties that are blocking inter-country sales,
right,
in business. So there's all these things that are getting in the way over and above just the country saying, okay, you can do it.
Right.
So there needs to be an infrastructure. Are physicians going to get in trouble for it? Physicians don't know what they're doing. Even in the states that have had medical cannabis for decades now, we still don't have a clear training. We still are not teaching students much about the endocannabinoid system when they're in medical school. So even though it's the most prevalent neurotransmitter in the body, we're still not teaching medical students about it.
It just, for me, is we spoke a little earlier on, and I do lean in that direction. I always want to try and understand, because for me, so often it's economics, if you look deep enough, that is in the way. And we touched on a little bit. Are there things like big pharma that are standing in the way in terms of who they may know in the different states that are not quite there yet? Are there alcohol companies that are under threat by the fact that they would potentially lose value to cannabis? What do you think of that being partially that's stopping enough money being spent firstly on research and allowing us to understand it properly? What's in the way in that space? Is that just spooks, or is there a real issue there?
I think there's likely real issues. I can't really speak knowledgeably about it. I wonder, like with MDMA not getting approved by the FDA, I gotta wonder if big pharma's behind that.
Got you.
But I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
Personally, my experience has been in the medical field that it's not big pharma. It's the stigma that is surrounding these drugs that have been there for generations. What we've been taught to fear these drugs,
Yes.
that they're bad. There's moral condemnation of it. And I think in addiction psychiatry, and I'm in addiction psychiatry, we're perhaps the worst. I think part of it is that most of us are white and relatively well-to-do. If my kid would have gotten caught with cannabis, not a big deal. If they needed treatment, I could get them in treatment. If they just needed to go to court, yeah, I can pay a lawyer. But if you're poor, if you're black or brown, in our country anyways, those are the ones
I don't think
that
it's
were
different
suffering
here,
the problem.
frankly.
And so as physicians, we didn't see that. There's also the bias of, as an addiction psychiatrist, unless I'm working in a jail or I'm coming from a disenfranchised community, I don't see the harms of prohibition. I'm not seeing what happens to people that get caught and have to suffer the consequences.
Yeah.
And it's just something we grew up with. I mean, most doctors grew up with DARE, that taught, they had police teach kids how dangerous it was. And I know physicians that are just adamant that this is the wrong thing to do. It's dangerous. And they see people suffering the consequences of cannabis. You know,
When you say that, you're talking about the consequences of the prohibition part of it, and people being caught? Or?
No, I'm talking about people with psychiatric disorders that are not benefiting
I'm with you.
from cannabis, but in fact are suffering consequences. And I hear it a lot, and I can't believe that they're all misdiagnosing people. There are consequences, and we have high potency that can be scary,
Yes.
particularly if you don't know what you're doing with them.
Yes.
So I think they mean well, but they're not understanding that this is not, by making it prohibited, we are not helping the situation. I mean, we don't do that with alcohol, tobacco.
No.
We don't say to people that are overweight that if you have a cheeseburger, well,
Here's a
we're going to make them illegal.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think, for me, I'm going to go back to the big pharma space. It is a favorite for me. I just feel that there's people and players that could be doing more for the absolute benefit of the person that would get to use cannabis as a healing mechanism rather than necessarily a high space. Not that there should be a difference between my choice.
I don't think it's the job of the big pharma or alcohol to be showing whether cannabis is useful or not useful from a medical perspective. If a cannabis company might be interested in it, but I think research is optimally left to the government, because the government comes with its own biases.
Yes.
But I think I'd feel more comfortable with it coming from them than I would from the alcohol or big pharma. It's really, really expensive. I mean, it's to get these kind of, one thing is research. Companies are going to put a lot of money into cannabis so they can make money.
Sure thing.
So they are only going to want to commit to spending $1 billion to get their drug approved if they can make money on it.
I got you. So there's again, you're going into the money part of the behavior.
Otherwise, why spend several $100 million?
Sure.
I mean, it doesn't make sense.
I'm with you. I think where I'm coming at it from is that let us assume that there's great benefits from a health point of view for the general public. Why would it not be in the interests of big pharma to want to deliver that to the general public? And if there's so much anecdotal and research that's saying it is good, should they not be adopting or spending more time wanting to bring that into their basket of medicine is more my question. So getting to be more pro cannabis because of what they see, and therefore supporting its journey into medicine offered out of their own basket.
When you say they, who are you referring to?
I'm referring to Big Pharma. I'm referring to the fact, I think it's for both of them, there's two people for me become the players in the room. One is from a recreational point of view. I absolutely think that alcohol would lobby against it in many instances, or slow it down, because it is a competitor for sociability. So there's a good reason. And then from a big pharma point of view, the fact that cannabis is as affordable as it is, and has shown such good positive result in many of the instances that it's being used, I would think that Big Pharma would be trying to do more to bring cannabis into their offering. So whether it's, I mean, I don't really want to go into brands, but any of the top pharmaceutical companies, I really feel that they should be doing more to try to bring, and let's go DMT, and the others, the psychedelics. If those are having such good results, why is Big Pharma not wanting to offer that to patients and bring that into their basket? Is, I think, essentially.
I think in Big Pharma, we do have companies that are looking at this. But again, it always has to be something that they can bring to market. So, for instance, with Ibogaine, when you have something from a root that everyone can have access to, then there's nothing to patent. Unless there's something they can patent about it, the extraction process, or a novel compound,
Yes.
then they're not going to spend $1 billion to do it. Cannabis, I mean, there's, I'm pointing at, I'm at the Jazz Farm, and so I'm pointing outside at where they have all their cultivars, and they have a couple dozen cultivars. I mean, each one of those, if you could hone down the genetics and say, okay, this is our cultivar. For that specific cultivar, it's going to cost $1 billion for you to show that it is effective for this one illness. And then, at least in U.S.,
I got you.
There has not been a plant that is approved by the FDA in its history, even though they've had a botanical division for many years. Extraction, yes, you can do it, but you're not going to get flowers. So go into a dispensary in the U.S., you've got a few dozen different cultivars in there, and different methods of administration. Each one is going to take FDA approval. It's not feasible. That's why rescheduling it, cannabis, to Schedule 3 in our country from Schedule 1, that means no medical value, which is where cannabis is now, is really not going to make much difference.
I'm with you. Hey, so that was just a really, really, really interesting portion of the interview. So there's some more to come. We'll bring that together for you for next weekend. But a huge amount there to contemplate. Lovely to have someone with such international experience on our show, and that has such a good perspective of where harm reduction is. Until next week, you take care. Make sure you got enough doob to see you through the weekend and the week. Ciao for now.
This is Dr. Bryon Adinoff, and you're watching 420 Central TV.